The blood on her dress was the first thing Preston Cole noticed when he found the woman collapsed against the fence post at the far edge of his Montana property. Her auburn hair matted with dirt and sweat, despite the crisp September morning in 1882. He dismounted from his horse in one fluid motion, years of ranching making the movement automatic as he approached the unconscious woman with caution. The territory was vast and unforgiving, and strangers on his land usually meant trouble, but the blood seeping through the torn fabric of her traveling dress told him this woman was not the cause of trouble but a victim of it. Her breathing was shallow but steady, and when he knelt beside her, he could see the angry gash along her temple and the way her left arm hung at an awkward angle. "Miss." Preston's voice was low but firm, years of commanding ranch hands giving it a natural authority. "Can you hear me?" The woman's eyelids fluttered, revealing eyes the color of honey before they closed again. Her lips moved but no sound came out. Preston made a quick decision, knowing that leaving her out here while he rode for the doctor in town would likely mean finding her dead on his return. The nearest neighbor was 15 miles away, and Dr. Morrison did not make house calls this far out unless absolutely necessary. He would have to tend to her himself. He lifted her carefully, mindful of what appeared to be broken ribs given the way she gasped even in unconsciousness when he shifted her weight. She was lighter than he expected, suggesting she had not eaten properly in some time. Her dress, though torn and bloody, was of good quality, the kind a respectable woman would wear for travel. No jewelry adorned her fingers or neck, but the pale band of skin on her ring finger suggested a piece had recently been removed or taken. Preston secured her on his horse, mounting behind her to keep her upright against his chest as they made the 20-minute ride back to his ranch house. The two-story structure stood proud against the Montana landscape, built by his father 20 years ago when they first claimed this land. The white paint was fresh, applied just last spring, and the wraparound porch his mother had insisted upon provided shade during the brutal summer months. "Boss," his foreman, Sam Tucker, came running from the barn, eyes widening at the sight of the unconscious woman. "What happened?" "Found her at the south fence. Get me hot water, clean cloths, and fetch my mother's medical kit from the hall closet." Preston dismounted carefully, cradling the woman against his chest. "Then ride for Dr. Morrison. Tell him it is urgent but not to kill his horse getting here." Sam nodded and disappeared into the house while Preston carried the woman inside, taking her directly to the guest room on the first floor. The room had not been used since his sister visited last Christmas, but it was clean, and the bed was made with fresh linens. He laid the woman down gently, noting the way her face contorted in pain, even as she remained unconscious. Preston lit the oil lamp on the bedside table, flooding the room with warm light that revealed the full extent of her injuries. Besides the head wound and what he suspected was a broken arm, her knuckles were scraped raw as if she had fought back against her attacker. Bruises in the shape of fingers marked her throat, and anger surged through him at the thought of someone trying to strangle this defenseless woman. Sam returned with the supplies, setting them on the dresser before heading out to fetch the doctor. Preston rolled up his sleeves and got to work, having learned basic medical care out of necessity over the years. Ranch life meant injuries, and waiting for a doctor often meant the difference between life and death. He started with the head wound, carefully cleaning away the dried blood and dirt to reveal a 3-inch gash that would need stitches. His hands were steady as he threaded the needle, remembering the way his mother had taught him before she passed 5 years ago. The woman stirred as he made the first stitch, a soft whimper escaping her lips, but she did not fully wake. Preston worked quickly, closing the wound with neat, even stitches that would minimize scarring. He moved on to examining her arm, feeling along the bone until he found the break just above her wrist. Setting bones was familiar work after years of tending to injured ranch hands and livestock. He worked methodically, aligning the bones before wrapping the arm tightly with splints he fashioned from kindling wood and strips of clean cloth. The woman cried out this time, her eyes flying open in pain and confusion. "Easy now," Preston said, his voice taking on the same gentle tone he used with spooked horses. "You are safe. I am helping you." The honey-colored eyes focused on him with difficulty, fear, and pain warring in their depths. "Where?" Her voice was barely a whisper, rough from injury. "My ranch, about 30 miles west of Helena. I found you on my property. Can you tell me what happened?" But the woman's eyes had already closed again, consciousness slipping away like water through fingers. Preston finished wrapping her arm, then covered her with a quilt, noting the way she shivered despite the warmth of the room. Shock, most likely, combined with exposure and whatever trauma had left her in such a state. He sat in the chair beside the bed, keeping watch over his unexpected patient as the afternoon sun tracked across the sky. Dr. Morrison arrived 3 hours later, his weathered face serious as he examined the woman with professional efficiency. "You did good work," the doctor said, inspecting Preston's stitches. "Clean, even. The arm is set properly, too. She has 2 cracked ribs on her left side, extensive bruising and signs of dehydration and malnourishment. Whatever happened to her, it was not quick or kind. Will she live?" Preston asked, surprised by how much the answer mattered to him. "Barring infection or complications, yes. But she will need careful tending for the next few weeks. Keep the wounds clean, make sure she drinks plenty of water when she wakes, and try to get some broth in her if she can manage it. I will come back in 3 days to check on her progress." Dr. Morrison packed his bag, then fixed Preston with a knowing look. "You planning to keep her here? Until she heals enough to tell me where she belongs or where she wants to go." Preston walked the doctor out, paying him from the cash he kept in his desk. "I will not turn an injured woman out. Good man, your mother raised you right, doctor." Morrison tipped his hat and climbed into his buggy, leaving Preston alone with his unconscious house guest and a dozen unanswered questions. The woman drifted in and out of consciousness over the next 2 days, never fully awake, but sometimes aware enough to take sips of water or weak broth that Preston patiently spooned between her cracked lips. He found himself checking on her throughout the day and night, unable to focus fully on the ranch work that demanded his attention. Sam and the other hands managed without him, used to his occasional absences, but they exchanged knowing looks when their boss rushed back to the house every few hours. On the 3rd morning, Preston entered the guest room to find the woman awake and sitting up in bed, her good hand clutching the quilt to her chest as she looked around the unfamiliar room with wide, frightened eyes. "Good morning," he said softly, keeping his distance to avoid startling her. "My name is Preston Cole. This is my ranch. You have been unconscious for the better part of 3 days." The woman studied him warily, taking in his tall frame, broad shoulders, and the way he deliberately kept his hands visible and non-threatening. His dark hair was neatly trimmed, his face clean-shaven, and his blue eyes held a gentleness that seemed at odds with his imposing size. "I do not remember how I got here," she said finally, her voice stronger than before but still rough. "I remember running and pain and then nothing until I woke up in this bed. I found you collapsed against my fence post. You were badly injured. I brought you here and tended your wounds. Dr. Morrison confirmed you will heal, though it will take time." Preston gestured to the chair. "May I sit? I would like to ask you some questions if you are feeling strong enough." After a moment's hesitation, she nodded. Preston sat, leaning back to appear as non-threatening as possible. "Can you tell me your name, Beatrice?" "Beatrice Darrow." The name came automatically, then fear flashed across her face as if she regretted revealing it. "It is nice to meet you, Miss Darrow, though I wish it were under better circumstances. Can you tell me what happened to you?" Beatrice's good hand moved to her throat, fingers tracing the bruises there. "I was traveling by stagecoach from Virginia City. We were attacked by bandits. They killed the driver and the other passengers. I managed to escape while they were arguing over the strongbox, but one of them came after me. He caught me, and we fought. I do not remember what happened after that, just running through the darkness." Preston felt his jaw tighten at the casual mention of murder and violence, though such things were not uncommon in Montana territory. "Did you know any of the other passengers?" "No, I was traveling alone." Beatrice looked down at her bandaged arm, avoiding his eyes. "I have no family waiting for me, no one who will notice I did not arrive at my destination." There was a story there, Preston sensed, layers of pain and secrets that went deeper than the physical wounds he had tended. But he did not push, knowing trust had to be earned, not demanded. "You are safe here," he said instead, "for as long as you need. When you are healed, we can discuss what comes next." Beatrice's eyes filled with tears that she blinked back furiously. "Why are you being kind to me? You do not know me. I could be anyone, anything." "You are an injured woman who needed help. That is all I need to know for now." Preston stood, moving to the door. "I will bring you some breakfast. Dr. Morrison said you need to build your strength back up." He left before she could respond, making his way to the kitchen where he assembled a tray with scrambled eggs, toast, and coffee. His cooking skills were basic but adequate, honed during the years between his mother's death and now. When he returned to the guest room, Beatrice had wiped away her tears and was sitting up straighter, trying to project a strength he suspected she did not feel. Preston set the tray across her lap, watching as she awkwardly managed the fork with her right hand. Her left arm was still splinted and bound, limiting her movement. After a few frustrating attempts, he gently took the fork from her. "Let me help." Beatrice's first instinct was clearly to refuse, pride warring with practicality in her expression. But hunger won out, and she allowed him to feed her small bites, chewing slowly as if her jaw ached. They ate in silence, a surprisingly comfortable quiet that spoke to something neither of them was ready to name. "Tell me about your ranch," Beatrice said finally, needing to fill the silence with something other than her own thoughts. Preston was happy to oblige, describing the 2,000 acres he had inherited from his father, the 100 head of cattle he was building up, the 5 ranch hands who helped him manage it all. He spoke of the brutal winters and brief but glorious summers, the way the mountains looked at sunrise, and the satisfaction of building something lasting and good. Beatrice listened intently, asking questions that showed a sharp intelligence and genuine interest. Preston found himself talking more than he had in months, drawn out by her attention, and the way she seemed to relax as they spoke of things far removed from violence and fear. Dr. Morrison arrived that afternoon, examining Beatrice with brisk efficiency before declaring her healing well. "The stitches can come out in another week. Keep the arm splinted for at least a month. The ribs will hurt for a while, but they will mend on their own. You were lucky, young lady, very lucky indeed." After the doctor left, Preston helped Beatrice to the chair by the window, noting how weak she still was despite her attempts to hide it. She settled with a grateful sigh, looking out at the ranch spread before her. The barn stood to the west, its red paint bright in the afternoon sun. Beyond it, Horses grazed in a large paddock while cattle dotted the rolling hills in the distance. "It is beautiful," Beatrice said softly. "Peaceful. It can be. It can also be harsh and unforgiving, but I would not trade it for anything." Preston leaned against the window frame, studying her profile. "What were you traveling to Helena for, if you do not mind my asking?" Beatrice was silent for so long he thought she would not answer. When she finally spoke, her voice was barely above a whisper. "I was running away. From Virginia City, from a life I did not choose, from a man who thought he owned me." Preston waited, sensing there was more if he gave her space to tell it. "I was engaged to be married. My father arranged it before he died last year. The man, Robert Callahan, was wealthy and influential in Virginia City. Everyone said I was lucky to have caught his attention." Beatrice's laugh was bitter. "But Robert was cruel. He liked to hurt things, to control them. The first time he hit me, he apologized and blamed it on drink. The second time, he did not bother with excuses. When he broke my engagement ring, the mark on my finger, it was because I had smiled at another man at a social gathering." Preston felt rage building in his chest, a hot and dangerous thing he forced down through sheer will. "Where is he now?" "In Virginia City, I hope. I left in the middle of the night 2 weeks ago, taking only what I could carry and the small amount of money my father left me. I have been traveling since then, trying to put as much distance as possible between us. But the bandits took everything I had left. My bags, my money, even my mother's locket." Beatrice touched her bare neck, grief evident in the gesture. "I am sorry," Preston said, meaning it. "No one deserves to be treated that way. Some men think women are property to be controlled." Beatrice turned to look at him, studying his face as if trying to determine what kind of man he was. "Are you married, Mr. Cole?" "No, I have not found a woman willing to put up with ranch life yet." He offered a small smile. "And please call me Preston. Only if you call me Beatrice or B. My mother used to call me B." The memory seemed to bring her both comfort and pain. Over the following days, a routine developed. Preston would check on Beatrice first thing in the morning, bringing her breakfast and helping her wash and dress with a propriety that would have made his mother proud. He had altered one of his shirts to fit her smaller frame since her dress had been ruined beyond repair, pairing it with a split riding skirt that had belonged to his sister. The clothes hung loose on her thin frame, but they were clean and comfortable. Beatrice grew stronger each day, able to walk around the room and then eventually venture out to the porch where she would sit in the rocking chair and watch the ranch operations with keen interest. Preston found himself looking forward to these evening conversations, when the day's work was done and he could sit beside her, sharing stories of their pasts while carefully avoiding the darker moments. He learned that Beatrice loved to read and had dreams of becoming a teacher before her father's death had derailed those plans. She had a quick wit and a sharp tongue that emerged as her fear faded, challenging Preston's opinions and making him laugh with observations about ranch life from an outsider's perspective. In turn, she learned that Preston was methodical and patient, thoughtful in his decisions and fair in his dealings with both people and animals. "You are different from the men I have known," Beatrice said one evening, 2 weeks after Preston had found her. The stitches had been removed that morning, leaving a thin red line along her temple that would eventually fade to a white scar. "You are gentle." "Gentle is not a word most would use to describe me," Preston replied with amusement. "The cattle might disagree, as would the horse I broke last month." "Gentle with people then, with me." Beatrice looked at him directly, the setting sun turning her hair to flames. "You could have demanded answers, pushed me to leave, treated me as an inconvenience. Instead, you have been nothing but kind." Preston felt heat rise to his face, unused to such direct praise. You needed help. It was the right thing to do. Many men know the right thing and still choose the easy thing. Beatrice reached out with her good hand, hesitating before letting it fall back to her lap. Thank you, Preston, for everything. That night, Preston lay awake in his room, unable to stop thinking about the woman sleeping down the hall. He had noticed things over the past 2 weeks, small details that added up to something significant. The way his heart lifted when he heard her laugh. How he found excuses to check on her throughout the day. The fact that he had turned down an invitation to dinner at the neighbor's ranch because it would mean leaving Beatrice alone for an evening. He was falling in love with her, he realized with a mixture of wonder and fear. It had been gradual, building with each shared conversation and comfortable silence. Each time her eyes lit up when he entered the room, each moment of vulnerability she entrusted to him. But love was complicated, especially with a woman who was healing from trauma and running from a dangerous past. Preston resolved to keep his feelings to himself for now, to give Beatrice time and space to heal without the pressure of his emotions weighing on her recovery. But fate and the Montana Territory had other plans. Robert Callahan arrived at the ranch 3 days later, riding up the long drive in a fancy carriage that looked absurd against the rugged landscape. Preston was in the barn when Sam came running to tell him they had visitors, and something in his foreman's expression told him this was not a friendly call. Preston walked out to meet the carriage, taking in the well-dressed man who emerged with the kind of arrogant confidence that came from money and power. Robert Callahan was handsome in a polished way, his dark suit expensive, and his boots shined to a mirror finish. 2 large men flanked him, hired muscle trying and failing to look respectable. Preston Cole. Robert's voice was smooth and cultured, marked with the accent of someone educated back east. That is me. What can I do for you? I am looking for my fiancée, Beatrice Darrow. I have reason to believe she may be here. Robert smiled, but it did not reach his cold eyes. She has been ill, you see, not in her right mind. I have been searching for her for weeks, terribly worried. Preston kept his face neutral, years of poker games serving him well. What makes you think she is here? I heard in town that you found an injured woman on your property. The description matches my poor Beatrice. Robert took a step forward, the hired muscle moving with him. I would like to see her to take her home where she belongs. If there is a woman here, which I am neither confirming nor denying, she would have to agree to see you. I do not force my guests to do anything against their will. Preston stood his ground, noting how Sam and 2 other ranch hands had emerged from the barn, sensing trouble. Robert's smile hardened into something ugly. I am her fiancé. I have a legal right to take her home. You have no rights on my property beyond what I grant you. Preston's voice turned cold, and I am granting you the right to turn around and leave. The 2 hired men reached for weapons, but Preston's ranch hands were faster, rifles appearing as if by magic. Robert held up a hand, stopping his men before things could escalate to violence. This is not over, Mr. Cole. Beatrice belongs to me. I will have her back one way or another. Robert climbed back into his carriage, signaling the driver to turn around. But as they started down the drive, he called back. You should ask her about the money she stole from me, about the lies she told. But then, I suppose a pretty face can make a man overlook many sins. Preston watched until the carriage disappeared from view before turning and striding back to the house. He found Beatrice in the guest room, sitting on the bed with her face pale and her whole body trembling. You heard, he said, not a question. I saw him from the window. Beatrice looked up at Preston with terror in her eyes. He found me. I do not know how, but he found me. Preston sat beside her, wanting to pull her into his arms but restraining himself. "He is gone. I sent him away. He will come back. Robert always gets what he wants. He has money and influence and no conscience." Beatrice stood and began pacing, her movements jerky with panic. "I have to leave, tonight. If I go now, maybe he will not burn down your ranch or hurt your men. He is capable of terrible things, Preston. Stop." Preston caught her gently by the shoulders, turning her to face him. "You are not leaving. I will not let him hurt you. You do not understand what he is like. Then tell me everything, and we will face it together." Preston guided her back to the bed, sitting close enough that their knees touched. "Trust me, Bea." And she did. Beatrice told him everything about the 6 months of her engagement to Robert Callahan, about the escalating violence, the way he isolated her from friends, the threats he made when she tried to end things. She told Preston about the night she finally fled, stealing $200 from Robert's desk because he had taken control of her inheritance and left her with no means to survive on her own. "He told everyone I was mentally unstable, that I had delusions and needed to be institutionalized for my own good. If he catches me, he will lock me away in an asylum where no one can question him." Beatrice's voice broke. "I would rather die than go back to him." Preston felt something fundamental shift inside him, a determination settling into his bones like steel. "That will not happen. I promise you, Beatrice, he will not take you anywhere you do not want to go. How can you stop him? He has the law on his side. A woman's word against a man's, and I am the one who stole from him." Beatrice shook her head, hopelessness evident in every line of her body. "Because you are not alone anymore." Preston took her hand, the first real touch beyond the medical care he had provided. "Let me help you. Let me protect you." "Why?" Beatrice searched his face, looking for the ulterior motive she had learned to expect from men. "What do you want from me?" "I want you safe. I want you happy. I want you to have the life you deserve, free from fear and violence." Preston hesitated, then decided honesty was the only path forward. "And if I am being completely truthful, I want the chance to see where this connection between us might lead. But that is your choice, Bea. Always your choice." Beatrice stared at him, tears streaming down her face. "You barely know me. I know that you are brave and intelligent. I know that you face each day with courage despite everything you have endured. I know that your laugh makes me smile, and your company has made this ranch feel like a home instead of just a place I live." Preston brushed a tear from her cheek with his thumb. "I know that I have never felt this way about anyone, and I would be a fool to let you walk away without telling you. I am broken, Preston, damaged. You deserve better than someone like me. You are not broken. You are healing." "There is a difference." Preston stood, giving her space to process. "Think about it, but please do not run, not tonight. Give me a chance to find a way through this that does not end with you looking over your shoulder for the rest of your life." That night, Preston rode into Helena and went directly to the sheriff's office. Matthew Harrison was a good man, honest and fair, and Preston counted him as a friend despite their infrequent meetings. The sheriff listened to Preston's story with a grave expression, taking notes as he spoke. "It is a complicated situation," Matthew said when Preston finished. "Technically, if she took money that belonged to him, Callahan could press charges for theft. But given the circumstances you described, any reasonable judge would take her claims of abuse into consideration. So what do I do?" Preston leaned forward, desperate for answers. "You need proof. Witnesses who saw the abuse, medical documentation of injuries, anything that corroborates her story." Matthew tapped his pencil against his desk. "And you need to establish that she was acting in self-preservation, not malice. The $200 she took, was it less than her inheritance? Significantly less. Her father left her nearly $5,000, all of which Callahan took control of when they became engaged. Then she could argue she was merely reclaiming a portion of what was rightfully hers. Matthew stood, walking to a shelf lined with law books. But the bigger problem is the mental instability claim. If Callahan has convinced people back in Virginia City that Miss Darrow is insane, he could petition to have her committed to his care regardless of what she wants. Preston felt sick. There has to be something we can do. There is, actually. If she were married to someone else, Callahan's claim as her fiancé would be void. A husband's rights supersede those of a fiancé. Matthew looked at Preston meaningfully. Of course, that would require finding someone willing to marry her quickly and for the right reasons. Preston understood immediately what the sheriff was suggesting. How quickly could you perform a marriage? I am authorized to do so immediately, provided both parties consent and are of sound mind. Matthew pulled out a marriage license form. Is that something Miss Darrow would agree to? I do not know, but I intend to find out. Preston took the form, tucking it into his jacket. Thank you, Matthew. Be careful, Preston. Men like Callahan do not give up easily. If you do this, you will be making a powerful enemy. Some things are worth the risk. Preston rode back to the ranch through the darkness, his mind racing with what he would say to Beatrice. When he arrived, he found her in the kitchen, attempting to make coffee with one hand while her healing arm remained splinted. She looked up when he entered, hope and fear warring in her expression. I spoke to the sheriff, Preston said, accepting the cup of coffee she handed him despite its questionable quality. He confirmed that Callahan could cause serious problems, especially with the mental instability claims. Beatrice's face fell. So I have to run. Or there is another option. Preston set down the coffee and pulled out the marriage license. If you were married to someone else, Callahan's claim as your fiancé would be legally void. He would have no standing to force you to do anything. Beatrice took the paper with trembling hands, reading it carefully. You are asking me to marry you. I am offering you a way out, a legal shield against Callahan and whatever he tries to do. Preston moved closer but did not touch her, knowing she needed space to make this decision. It would be a real marriage in the eyes of the law, but it could be in name only if that is what you want. You would have protection, legal standing, and time to heal without fear. And when you are ready, if you decide you want to leave, we can discuss ending it. That is not fair to you. Beatrice looked up from the paper. You should not have to tie yourself to me out of pity or obligation. It is not pity, and the only obligation I feel is the one my heart insists upon. Preston took a breath, laying his cards on the table. I meant what I said earlier. I have feelings for you, Beatrice, strong feelings that grow deeper every day. But I also understand that you are healing from trauma and may never feel the same way. I can accept that and still want to help you. And if I say yes, if we do this and I truly can never love you the way you deserve. Beatrice's eyes filled with tears. What then? Then I will have had the privilege of knowing you, of being your friend and protector. That will be enough. Preston held out his hand. What do you say, Bea? Will you marry me? Beatrice looked at the hand, at the man offering her salvation with no guarantee of anything in return. She thought of Robert and his cruelty, of the fear that had been her constant companion for so long. And then she thought of Preston, of his gentleness and patience, of the way he had cared for her without ever demanding anything in return. Yes, she whispered, placing her hand in his. I will marry you. They rode to Helena the next morning, Beatrice wearing the best dress Preston could find in his late mother's wardrobe, altered quickly to fit her smaller frame. The ceremony in Sheriff Harrison's office was brief and businesslike, with Sam and the sheriff's deputy serving as witnesses. But when Preston slipped a simple gold band on Beatrice's finger, the one that had belonged to his grandmother, the moment felt sacred despite its unconventional circumstances. "You may kiss your bride," Sheriff Harrison said with a gentle smile. Preston looked at Beatrice, silently asking permission. She nodded slightly, and he leaned in to press a chaste kiss to her lips, brief and sweet and full of promise. When they pulled apart, Beatrice's cheeks were flushed and her eyes were bright with unshed tears. "Congratulations, Mr. and Mrs. Cole," the sheriff said, handing them the official marriage certificate. "I hope you will be very happy together." They rode back to the ranch in comfortable silence, the autumn sun warm on their faces. Preston helped Beatrice down from the horse, his hands lingering at her waist a moment longer than necessary. "Thank you," Beatrice said softly, "for everything you have done for me. You are my wife now. We take care of each other." Preston offered her his arm. "Shall we go inside, Mrs. Cole?" Beatrice took his arm, and together they walked into the house that was now legally her home. That evening, over a dinner of roasted chicken and vegetables that Preston cooked with surprising skill, they discussed the practicalities of their arrangement. Beatrice would keep the guest room for now, giving her privacy and space to continue healing. They would present themselves as a normal married couple to the outside world, protecting her from Callahan's reach. And they would take things slowly, building on the friendship that had developed over the past few weeks. "I want to contribute," Beatrice said as they cleared the dishes. "I cannot just sit around doing nothing. I need purpose." "What did you have in mind?" Preston asked, washing while she dried with her good hand. "You mentioned needing help with the ranch books. I am good with numbers, and perhaps I could help with the cooking. Your skills are admirable, but I suspect the men would appreciate some variety." Beatrice smiled, and Preston felt his heart skip at the sight. "The books are a disaster," Preston admitted. "I hate paperwork. If you could make sense of them, that would be a tremendous help." Over the following weeks, Beatrice threw herself into ranch life with an enthusiasm that surprised them both. Her arm healed enough that the splint was removed, though her wrist was still weak and the bones ached in cold weather. She took over the household finances, organizing receipts and ledgers with meticulous care and discovering ways to save money that impressed even the practical Preston. She learned to cook for a household of ranch hands, producing meals that had the men singing her praises and looking for excuses to visit the main house. Preston watched her blossom, the scared and broken woman he had found slowly transforming into someone confident and capable. She laughed more easily now, the shadows in her eyes fading as days passed without incident. They fell into an easy partnership, working side by side during the day and sitting together on the porch each evening, talking until the stars filled the sky. "I received a letter today," Beatrice said one night in late October, nearly 2 months after Preston had found her. "From Robert's lawyer." Preston tensed. "What did it say?" "That Robert is dropping all claims against me in exchange for me relinquishing any future claim to my inheritance from my father." Beatrice handed him the letter. "He wants me to sign this document stating that I have no legal right to the money he took." Preston read the letter carefully, noting the legal language and veiled threats. "You do not have to sign anything you do not want to. But I do want to. That money comes with too many strings, too many memories. I would rather be free of it and him completely." Beatrice looked at Preston seriously. "Is that foolish? That is a significant sum I am giving up. It is your decision. But no, I do not think it is foolish to choose peace over money." Preston folded the letter. "Though I will have Sheriff Harrison review this to make sure signing it does not create any unintended consequences." The sheriff confirmed that the document was straightforward, and Beatrice signed it in his office with Preston beside her. She walked out of the building looking lighter, as if a weight had been lifted from her shoulders. "It is done," she said, taking a deep breath of the crisp autumn air. "I am truly free." That evening, as they sat on the porch watching the sunset paint the sky in shades of orange and gold, Beatrice reached for Preston's hand. It was the first time she had initiated physical contact, and Preston felt his breath catch at the simple touch. "I want to tell you something," Beatrice said, her fingers intertwining with his. "These past 2 months have been the happiest of my life. You have shown me what it means to be treated with respect and kindness. You have given me safety and purpose and a place to belong." "You have given me far more than I have given you," Preston replied, his thumb stroking across her knuckles. "You have made this house a home. You have brought laughter and light into a life that was becoming too solitary." "Preston." Beatrice turned to face him fully. "When you asked me to marry you, you said it could be in name only, that I could leave if I wanted. Do you still feel that way?" Preston's heart was pounding, but he kept his voice steady. "I want you to stay because you want to, not because you feel obligated. What are you asking me, B?" "I am asking if this marriage could be real, not just legal protection, but a true partnership. I am asking if you still have feelings for me, because I have discovered that I have feelings for you." Beatrice's voice shook slightly. "I think I might be falling in love with you, and I do not know what to do with that." Preston cupped her face in his hands, his blue eyes intense. "I am already in love with you. I have been for weeks. I was just waiting for you to be ready. I am ready now. Or at least I want to try to be ready." Beatrice leaned into his touch. "I am still healing, still learning to trust, but I want to try with you." Preston kissed her then, really kissed her, pouring months of restrained longing into the connection of their lips. Beatrice responded with equal fervor, her arms wrapping around his neck as she pressed closer. When they finally pulled apart, both were breathing hard and smiling. "Does this mean you will move into my room?" Preston asked, his forehead resting against hers. "Eventually. Soon. But perhaps we could continue to take things slowly. I want to savor this, to build our relationship on a foundation that will last." Beatrice kissed him again, soft and sweet. "Is that all right?" "More than all right. We have all the time in the world." Preston stood, pulling her up with him. "Dance with me. There is no music. We will make our own." And there, on the porch of the ranch house under a Montana sky full of stars, Preston and Beatrice danced to a melody only they could hear. It was the beginning of something beautiful. A love built on trust and patience, and the kind of deep respect that would see them through whatever challenges lay ahead. Over the following months, their relationship deepened in small, significant ways. Beatrice moved into Preston's room in late November, and they discovered the joy of falling asleep and waking up in each other's arms. They learned each other's bodies with the same patience Preston had shown when nursing Beatrice back to health, taking time to explore and discover what brought pleasure without the rush of urgency. The first time they made love, in early December with snow falling softly outside their window, it was tender and gentle. Preston was careful with Beatrice, mindful of her past trauma, and she surprised them both with her eagerness once her initial nervousness faded. Afterward, as they lay tangled together in the warmth of their bed, Beatrice cried tears of relief and joy. "I was afraid I would never be able to do this without fear," she admitted, her head on Preston's chest. "But with you, I feel safe. I feel cherished. You are cherished. Every day for the rest of our lives. I will make sure you know that." Preston kissed the top of her head, his hand stroking down her bare back. Winter in Montana was harsh, but the Cole ranch was prepared. The house was well insulated and the stores were full. Preston and his men worked long hours keeping the livestock safe and fed. but he always made time for Beatrice, carving out moments of intimacy and connection even on the most demanding days. Beatrice continued to thrive, her confidence growing as she took on more responsibilities. She started a small garden in the spring, planning for summer vegetables. She befriended the wives of neighboring ranchers, attending quilting bees and social gatherings where she was welcomed without question as Preston's wife. The people of Helena accepted her as one of their own, and slowly the fear that Robert might reappear faded into distant memory. In April of 1883, Beatrice realized she was pregnant. She had suspected for a few weeks, but wanted to be certain before telling Preston. Dr. Morrison confirmed it during a routine visit, and Beatrice walked back to the ranch with a hand on her still flat stomach and a smile she could not contain. Preston was in the barn when she found him, examining a mare who was due to foal any day. He looked up when Beatrice entered, his face breaking into a grin at the sight of her. "You look happy," he observed, setting down the brush he had been using on the horse. "I am. Very happy." Beatrice took his hands in hers. "We are going to have a baby." Preston's expression went through shock, wonder, and pure joy in the space of a heartbeat. He let out a whoop of excitement, sweeping Beatrice off her feet and spinning her around despite her laughing protests to be careful. "A baby," he kept repeating, setting her down gently and kneeling to place his hands on her stomach. Our baby, Beatrice confirmed, running her fingers through his hair. "Are you happy?" Happy does not begin to cover it. Preston stood, pulling her into a kiss that was both celebratory and tender. "You have made me the luckiest man in Montana." The pregnancy progressed smoothly, with Beatrice experiencing only mild morning sickness and a tendency to fall asleep at odd times of day. Preston was attentive to the point of being overprotective, fussing over her until she had to gently remind him that she was pregnant, not fragile. But his concern came from love, and Beatrice found it endearing more than annoying. They prepared a nursery in one of the upstairs rooms, painting the walls a cheerful yellow, and building a cradle from pine wood that Preston sanded until it was smooth as silk. Beatrice sewed tiny clothes and blankets, her growing belly making it difficult to reach the sewing machine by the end of summer. Their son was born on a cold November morning, arriving with a lusty cry that announced his presence to the entire household. Preston was with Beatrice throughout the labor, holding her hand and whispering encouragement even when she cursed him for getting her into this situation. But the moment Dr. Morrison placed the baby in her arms, all the pain was forgotten. "He is perfect," Beatrice breathed, counting tiny fingers and toes while Preston looked on with wonder. "He has your nose," Preston observed, touching the baby's face with gentle reverence, "and your eyes. Look, they are blue." Beatrice looked up at her husband with tears streaming down her face. "We made this. Together we created this perfect little person." They named him Patrick Daniel Cole after both their fathers. Patrick was a content baby, sleeping well and eating eagerly, growing strong and healthy under his parents' devoted care. Preston proved to be a natural father, patient with middle-of-the-night feedings and diaper changes, happy to walk the floor with Patrick when he was fussy. The ranch continued to thrive under their joint management. Preston expanded the herd and built a new barn, while Beatrice kept the books balanced and managed a growing household. They hired additional help, including a young woman named Sarah, who assisted with the heavier housework and watched Patrick when Beatrice needed to focus on ranch business. Life settled into a comfortable rhythm of work and family, of quiet evenings together and bustling days full of purpose. Preston and Beatrice grew together rather than apart, their love deepening with each passing season. They learned to navigate disagreements with respect and compromise, to support each other through challenges, and to celebrate successes together. When Patrick was 2 years old, Beatrice became pregnant again. This pregnancy was harder than the first, leaving her exhausted and sick for months. Preston took on more of the household duties without complaint, caring for Patrick and his wife with equal devotion. Their daughter, Margaret Rose, was born in the spring of 1886, a tiny thing with auburn hair like her mother and a temperament far more demanding than her brother's had been. "She knows what she wants and will not settle for less," Preston said fondly, watching his daughter nurse with fierce determination. "Just like her mother." "I am not that demanding," Beatrice protested, though her smile showed she was not truly offended. "You are exactly that demanding, and I love it. You push me to be better, to do more, to never settle for less than our best." Preston kissed her forehead. "Our children are lucky to have you as their mother." The years passed with the kind of gentle inevitability that marked a life well lived. Patrick grew into a serious boy who loved working with the horses, while Margaret was bold and adventurous, constantly finding new ways to give her parents heart attacks with her fearlessness. A third child, Samuel Preston Cole, joined the family in 1889, completing what Beatrice declared was quite enough children. "Thank you very much." Preston and Beatrice watched their children grow with pride and joy, teaching them about hard work and integrity, about kindness and courage. They built a life that was rich in love, if not always in material wealth, though the ranch prospered enough to provide comfortably for their growing family. On their 10th wedding anniversary, Preston took Beatrice on a picnic to the spot where he had first found her, now marked by a sturdy new fence and green grass where there had once been only blood and fear. "You ever regret it?" Preston asked as they sat watching the sunset. "Marrying me instead of making your own way in the world?" Beatrice looked at him with surprise. "How could I regret the best decision I ever made? You gave me everything I ever wanted, even when I did not know I wanted it. You gave me far more. You took a lonely rancher and made him a husband and father. You filled my house with laughter and love. You turned a piece of land into a true home." Preston pulled out a small box, opening it to reveal a delicate necklace with a gold locket. "I know it does not replace the one you lost, but I wanted you to have something beautiful to mark the life we have built together." Beatrice opened the locket to find tiny portraits of their 3 children on one side and a photograph of her and Preston on their wedding day on the other. She burst into tears, happy ones this time, as Preston fastened the necklace around her neck. "It is perfect. You are perfect. This life we have built is perfect." Beatrice kissed him deeply, pouring a decade of love and gratitude into the connection. "I love you so much, Preston Cole." "And I love you, Beatrice Cole. Today, tomorrow, and every day after, until there are no more days to count." They returned to the ranch as the stars began to emerge, riding side by side the way they had learned to navigate everything in their lives, together. Equal partners in a love story that had started with tragedy and blossomed into something beautiful and enduring. The children were asleep when they arrived home, watched over by Sarah, who had stayed late for the occasion. Preston and Beatrice looked in on each of them. Patrick, now 8 and dreaming of the cattle drive he would join when he was old enough. Margaret at 5, already showing signs of the strong woman she would become. And Samuel, barely 6 months old and sleeping with his fist in his mouth. "We did good," Preston whispered, his arm around Beatrice's waist as they stood in the nursery doorway. "We did very good," Beatrice agreed. That night, they made love with the practiced ease of long-time partners who knew each other's bodies as well as their own, but also with the passion that had never dimmed despite the years and the changes that came with building a life together. Afterward, as they lay in the darkness listening to the familiar sounds of the ranch settling for the night, Beatrice thought back to the terrified woman who had run through the Montana wilderness seeking escape from a nightmare. She had found so much more than escape. She had found healing and purpose, and a love that sustained her through every challenge. She had found a partner who treated her as an equal, who valued her opinions and supported her dreams. She had found a home in every sense of the word. The years continued to unfold with their mixture of joy and sorrow, triumph and challenge. They buried Preston's father when the old man finally passed in 1892, and Beatrice held her husband as he grieved the loss. They celebrated when Patrick announced his intention to study veterinary medicine, supporting his dreams even though it meant he would leave the ranch for several years of schooling. They worried through Margaret's rebellious teenage years and Samuel's near death from pneumonia when he was 7. But through it all, Preston and Beatrice faced life together, their love the constant that anchored them through storms and sunshine alike. They grew older together, silver threading through their hair and lines marking their faces with the evidence of decades spent smiling and squinting against the Montana sun. The ranch prospered under their joint stewardship, becoming one of the most successful operations in the territory. When Montana achieved statehood in 1889, they celebrated with their neighbors, proud to be part of the new state's history. When the century turned in 1900, they threw a party for the whole town, their children now young adults who had brought home friends and, in Patrick's case, a fiancée named Emily, who won Beatrice's approval immediately with her kind heart and sharp mind. Preston and Beatrice danced at Patrick's wedding in the spring of 1901, holding each other close as they watched their eldest son marry his love. Margaret married 2 years later, choosing a schoolteacher named James who treated her with the respect and partnership she had learned to expect from watching her parents. Samuel, ever the unexpected one, announced his intention to become a doctor, inspired by the Care Doctor. Morrison had shown the family over the years. Grandchildren arrived, filling the ranch house with noise and laughter once again. Preston built a swing in the old oak tree by the creek, and Beatrice told stories on the porch while little ones sat at her feet in rapt attention. They spoke often of the early days, when Preston had found Beatrice broken and afraid, and how love and patience had healed wounds that went deeper than any scar. "You think we would have found each other if not for that day?" Beatrice asked one evening as they sat on the porch, now both in their 50s but still holding hands like newlyweds. "I think we were meant to find each other one way or another. Fate has a way of putting people where they need to be." Preston brought her hand to his lips. "But I am grateful every day that fate put you on my land, that I had the chance to know you and love you. I am grateful you saw past the blood and fear to the person underneath. I am grateful you had the patience to wait for me to heal, to never push or demand, but to simply be there." Beatrice rested her head on his shoulder. "You are the best man I have ever known, Preston Cole." They continued to work the ranch well into their 60s, though they had long since hired a manager to handle the day-to-day operations. Patrick had taken over the veterinary care of the livestock, while Samuel returned from medical school to open a practice in Helena, though he visited the ranch often. Margaret and James had moved to California, where she was teaching at a women's college and making a name for herself as an advocate for women's education. Preston and Beatrice were proud of their children, of the strong, independent people they had raised who went into the world with confidence and compassion. They delighted in their 7 grandchildren, spoiling them appropriately and sending them home full of cookies and stories. In the summer of 1912, Preston organized a surprise party for Beatrice's 60th birthday. The entire family gathered, along with friends from across Montana, and even a few who traveled from Virginia City. Beatrice was overwhelmed by the turnout, by the speeches and toasts that spoke of her kindness and strength, her intelligence and grace. "I never imagined I would live to see 60, Beatrice admitted to Preston that night as they prepared for bed. "When you found me that day, I was certain I would die out there in the wilderness. But you did not die. You survived and thrived and built a life that has touched so many people." Preston helped her out of her dress, his hand still gentle after 3 decades of marriage. "You are the strongest person I know, Bea. Only because you gave me the space and support to be strong. You never tried to control or diminish me. You celebrated my successes and supported me through failures." Beatrice turned to cup his face. "Thank you for 30 years of being the partner I did not know I needed. Thank you for 30 years of being the love of my life." They made love that night with the tenderness of long familiarity, bodies that knew each other intimately despite the changes time had wrought. Preston was still tall and strong, though his hair was now silver, and Beatrice had softened with age but remained beautiful in his eyes. They fit together perfectly, 2 pieces of a puzzle that had been searching for completion and found it in each other. The years continued their relentless march forward. Preston developed arthritis in his hands, making it difficult to do the detailed work he had once managed easily. Beatrice's eyesight weakened, requiring spectacles for reading and close work. But they adapted, supporting each other through the challenges of aging with the same partnership that had defined their marriage from the beginning. They celebrated their 40th anniversary in 1922, surrounded by children, grandchildren, and even 2 great-grandchildren courtesy of Patrick and Emily. The family had commissioned a portrait painted from one of the early photographs, showing Preston and Beatrice as they had been on their wedding day, young and hopeful and in love. "We were so young," Beatrice marveled, studying the portrait. "So naive about what life would bring." "Would you change anything if you could go back?" Preston asked, his arm around her waist as they stood together in the parlor. "Not a single moment. Every joy, every sorrow, every challenge brought us to where we are now. I would not trade this life for anything." Beatrice turned to kiss him. "I love you as much today as I did that first time I realized what was happening between us. More, actually. Love grows when it is tended properly, and we have tended ours with care." Preston held her close, breathing in the familiar scent of her hair. Preston Cole passed away peacefully in his sleep in the winter of 1925, his hand clasped in Beatrice's, as it had been for over 40 years. He was 73 years old and had lived a full, rich life. Beatrice held his body and wept for the loss of her partner, her best friend, her great love. But even in her grief, she was grateful for the decades they had shared, for the family they had built, for the love that had sustained her through everything. She continued to live on the ranch for another 5 years, though Patrick and Emily moved into the main house to care for her as her health declined. Beatrice spent her days in the rocking chair on the porch, watching the land that had been her salvation and her home for nearly half a century. She told stories to the great-grandchildren who visited, sharing the history of how she and Preston had met, how love had grown from the ashes of trauma into something beautiful and enduring. Beatrice Cole died in the spring of 1930, at the age of 77, surrounded by her children and grandchildren. Her last words were Preston's name, spoken with a smile as if she could see him waiting for her. The family buried her beside her husband on a hill overlooking the ranch, their headstones side by side beneath the vast Montana sky. The ranch itself continued for generations, passed down through Patrick and then to his children. The story of Preston and Beatrice became family legend, told and retold at gatherings as an example of true love and partnership. The guest room where Beatrice first healed was preserved as a memorial, and couples getting married in the family often spent their first night there, hoping to capture some of the magic that had started in that simple space. The gold locket Preston had given Beatrice on their 10th anniversary was passed down through the family, given to each daughter on her wedding day as a symbol of enduring love. Inside, the portraits faded with time, but the message remained clear. Love, real love, is built on trust and patience and mutual respect. It grows stronger through trials and challenges. It endures beyond death, living on in the family and legacy left behind. Preston and Beatrice Cole had found each other in the most unlikely of circumstances. He had healed her body and won her trust, and she had opened his heart to a love deeper than he imagined possible. Together, they had built a life that was ordinary in its daily rhythms, but extraordinary in its depth of feeling and commitment. They had raised children who went into the world with confidence and compassion. They had created a home that was a haven of safety and love. They had shown everyone who knew them what a true partnership looked like. And when the final chapter closed on their story, it was with the certainty that they had lived well and loved deeply. The rancher who found an injured woman on his land, and the woman who trusted him with her broken heart, had created something that would echo through generations. Their love story became the foundation upon which their descendants built their own lives, a reminder that the greatest healing comes from opening your heart to another person and having the courage to accept their love in return. The Montana wilderness that had witnessed Beatrice's darkest moment had also been the backdrop for her greatest joy. The land Preston had inherited became the soil in which their love took root and grew strong. And the simple act of one person showing kindness to another in their time of need blossomed into a legacy that would endure long after both of them had passed from the world. In the end, Preston and Beatrice's story was not about dramatic rescues or grand gestures. It was about the quiet, steady building of a life together. It was about choosing each other every day, even when things were hard. It was about healing together, growing together, and facing whatever came with the certainty that they would face it side by side. It was about a love that started in tragedy and transformed into triumph through patience, compassion, and unwavering commitment to each other's happiness and well-being. Their story proved that sometimes the most broken things can be made whole again with the right care and attention. That trust, once won, can become the foundation for something beautiful and lasting. That love, true love, is not about possession or control but about partnership and mutual respect. Preston and Beatrice Cole showed everyone who knew them what it meant to be truly devoted to another person, to build a life based on shared values and deep affection. And so their legacy lived on, not just in the physical ranch that bore the Cole name, but in the hearts of everyone who heard their story and believed that love could overcome even the darkest of circumstances. They had found each other when both needed it most, and together they had created a life worth living and a love worth celebrating. It was a simple story in many ways, but it was theirs, and it was perfect.